The congressional hearing room was tense, as the panel sat under glaring lights. Cameras rolled. Spectators whispered. Then, Congressman Wesley Hunt cleared his throat, locking eyes with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. What followed would shake the chamber and reverberate beyond Washington. Hunt, a former Army captain and staunch conservative, leaned into his microphone. His voice was calm but heavy with challenge. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, "you speak passionately, but where does your courage come from? Have you ever put your life on the line for this country?" The question drew gasps from the crowd. It was more than political, it was personal. The implication hung in the air like a thick fog. Crockett blinked once, then sat upright, her lips pressed into a steady line. Her silence made Hunt's words echo louder. Some on the panel exchanged awkward glances. A few Republicans smirked. Jasmine Crockett, known for her fiery responses and unapologetic style, remained composed. She adjusted her mic, slowly leaned forward, and gave a half-smile that warned of the storm to come. "Mr. Hunt," she began, her voice sharp and unshaken, "your resume is impressive. No one here discredits your service. But let me be very clear, you don't need to wear a uniform to serve this country. You don't need boots on the ground to stand with courage." The room quieted. Every word now carried weight. Crockett paused, measuring her response. "Since you're asking about courage," she continued, "let me take you back. Long before I ever ran for office, I stood face to face with threats just as real as war. I served my community in the courtroom," she said. "I fought for the voiceless when it wasn't popular or safe. I faced threats. I stood alone in courtrooms filled with hate. And I never flinched." The panel grew still. The smirks were gone. Hunt raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting the force in her voice. He opened his mouth to interject, but Crockett held up her hand. "Respectfully, Congressman, you had your moment. Now let me speak." Her tone didn't waver. "You see courage as wearing the uniform. I see courage as standing up in the face of injustice when everyone tells you to sit down." The audience leaned in. Crockett's voice began to rise, not in anger, but in undeniable conviction. "And let me remind you," she added, "many of our greatest patriots never fired a weapon. Some marched, some organized, some simply said, 'No,' when the law said, 'Yes,' to oppression." Her words pierced through the tension like a sharp blade. Wesley Hunt looked rattled for the first time. He hadn't expected her to draw a historical comparison. Crockett was connecting her story with the fight of generations before her, civil rights activists, reformers, and resistance leaders. "So when you question my courage, what exactly are you questioning?" She pressed. "My gender, my background, or the fact that I didn't serve the way you did." Her words weren't just for Hunt now, they were for every woman who ever sat in that chamber. Hunt leaned back in his chair, expression hard to read. Crockett wasn't finished. "My courage," she said, "was forged long before Congress. When I stood up against corrupt police departments, when I refused to let black voices be ignored, I chose a battle too. And guess what, Mr. Hunt," she continued, "sometimes the enemy doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it passes laws to keep people silent. Sometimes it hides behind protocol and calls it patriotism." The room was silent except for the furious tapping of reporters' keyboards. Crockett's eyes never left Hunt's. Her voice softened, but her impact only deepened. "I don't doubt your service. But don't you dare question mine." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some Democrats nodded. Even a few Republicans couldn't help but look impressed. The clash wasn't about military rank anymore, it was about who defines bravery and who gets to judge it. "You're right," Crockett added, "we need courage in Congress. But not just the courage to fight enemies overseas. We need the courage to face what's wrong here at home." Applause began to grow from the gallery. "It takes courage to fight racism in a broken justice system," she said. "It takes courage to stand against police brutality when it costs you votes. It takes courage to speak up when others stay silent for comfort." Hunt nodded slightly, maybe out of respect, or maybe to gather himself. He leaned toward his mic, voice lower now. "I never meant to diminish your work. I simply asked where your courage comes from." Crockett responded firmly, and I answered. "It comes from pain, from injustice, from the streets of Texas where young men don't make it home. From courtrooms that still don't see us as equal. from being a black woman in a white-dominated power structure. That courage, she said, doesn't come with medals. It doesn't come with ceremonies. It comes with scars no one sees. Her words held a truth too raw to ignore. The crowd remained hushed. Hunt exhaled slowly. "You make your point well," he admitted. "Perhaps I was too narrow in my view." It wasn't a full apology, but it was more than many expected. Crockett simply nodded. A younger Democrat whispered to a colleague, "That was history right there." It felt like it. A clash of backgrounds, worldviews, and lived experience had just unfolded in front of the nation. News clips were already being cut. Headlines drafted. Crockett shuts down courage critique, veteran versus fighter for justice, and Jasmine's thunderous response began trending across platforms. The hearing resumed, but the energy had changed. People paid closer attention. The air buzzed with something more electric than policy, truth. Later that night, Jasmine Crockett appeared on a news panel. "Did you plan that response?" a host asked. Crockett chuckled softly, "I didn't plan to be disrespected, but I did plan to speak my truth." Her response went viral. Young activists replayed her words. Veterans debated them. But one thing was clear, no one could deny the power of her stance. Civil rights leaders praised her bravery. "She reminded us that courage isn't uniform, it's universal," one remarked. What she did today was bigger than politics. On social media, the moment exploded. Memes, reels, remixes. People clipped her phrase, "Don't you dare question mine," into a new battle cry for the unheard. Hunt released a statement the next day, "I respect Congresswoman Crockett's commitment and passion. We may not always agree, but I appreciate her perspective." Reporters noted the statement as measured. Some said it was Hunt's quiet way of conceding that his question had backfired. But others saw it as a rare moment of bipartisan humility. Crockett didn't gloat. When asked about his response, she simply said, "That's how grown folks talk. You learn, you adjust, you move forward." The moment became symbolic. College debate teams dissected it. Leadership coaches used it as a case study on composure, clarity, and reclaiming your voice. Even military veterans chimed in, many agreeing with Crockett's sentiment. Service doesn't just happen in combat. It happens in classrooms, courtrooms, and Congress, one said. Meanwhile, Hunt was quieter in subsequent hearings. Not diminished, but more thoughtful. He seemed to watch his words more carefully around his colleague. Crockett's team received thousands of letters. From young girls, from lawyers, from mothers, from veterans, all thanking her for standing up in that moment. "You gave me strength to speak out at work," one woman wrote. "They questioned my value too. But I remembered your words, 'Don't you dare question mine.'" Crockett began using that phrase in her speeches. Not as a jab, but as a reminder. A reminder that no one gets to define another's sacrifice or silence their truth. Political analysts called it a turning point. Crockett is no longer just a firebrand. She's becoming a force, one anchor said. Her message resonated across party lines. In private, Hunt reportedly told a friend, "That woman's tough. I came in thinking I'd put her on the spot. Turns out, she put the whole country on notice." A week later, the two shared a brief handshake in the hallway. No cameras, no press, just mutual respect formed in the fire of conflict. Crockett later shared, "We don't have to agree. But we should never belittle each other's journey. Especially when we're all trying to serve something bigger than ourselves." Schools invited her to speak. She emphasized courage in the face of criticism. Real courage, she told students, is telling your truth when others try to bury it. Meanwhile, veterans groups invited her too. Her message had sparked conversations about what service really means, and who gets to wear the badge of bravery. Her response to Hunt wasn't rehearsed. It was lived, and that authenticity was what made the moment unforgettable. Hunt, for his part, refocused his committee work. He issued a statement on bipartisan reform. Crockett signed it. Proof that clash didn't end in division, but in unexpected collaboration. "Conflict isn't the enemy," Crockett said at a university event. "Silencing each other is." Her words, again, received a standing ovation. News outlets declared it a teachable moment. And for once, both parties seemed to take the lesson seriously. In political circles, the moment became a legend. One staffer joked, "That wasn't a hearing, it was a history lesson." Crockett's courage had redefined strength. Not as brute force or rank, but as resilience, voice, and clarity of purpose. Young women in politics began citing her speech in their campaigns. "If Jasmine can face that room and speak her truth, so can I," said a city council candidate. Commentators replayed the clip repeatedly. Not for views, but because it showed a rare moment of vulnerability, accountability, and power in Washington. Wesley Hunt, when asked again weeks later, simply said, "I asked the wrong question. But I got the right answer." Jasmine Crockett didn't seek revenge. She sought understanding. And that's what gave her reply such profound impact. The video of the exchange hit 12 million views in less than a month. It was shared not just in political circles, but in schools, churches, and households. "This is what democracy looks like," one teacher said, using the video in her civics class. "Not just yelling, but listening, responding, standing tall." Crockett's message expanded beyond the chamber. It became part of a national conversation about what leadership and courage really mean. Pundits who once dismissed her began to recognize her as a serious figure. She had proven she could not only fight, but elevate the room while doing it. And in that moment, amid lights, cameras, and judgment, she showed every girl watching that courage has many faces. The confrontation wasn't just about service. It was about respect, about identity, about being seen as enough. She had turned a challenge into a charge, a dismissal into a declaration. And millions heard her loud and clear. Hunt had underestimated her. But to his credit, he didn't double down. He listened. And that was a victory, too. In future hearings, Crockett and Hunt debated policy passionately, but always with that undercurrent of mutual recognition. It was a reminder that even adversaries could grow. That one clash, if handled right, could evolve into dialogue. Crockett's staff noted how that day changed her visibility. Donors increased. So did media requests. But most of all, so did the weight of her words. And still, she remained grounded. "It's not about going viral," she said. "It's about being heard when you need to be." Behind closed doors, other lawmakers admitted they had misjudged her. They saw her as loud. Now they saw her as loud, and right. She continued using her platform to elevate underrepresented voices. "Courage," she said, "is contagious. Let's spread it." For Hunt, the exchange was humbling, but constructive. He later remarked, "She reminded me that every kind of service matters. I'll carry that lesson." In a rare CNN segment, both were interviewed together. The chemistry had changed. The tension was gone. Only thoughtful respect remained. Crockett smiled, "We had our moment. Now we build from it." Hunt nodded, "Sometimes the best education comes from listening." Millions watched that segment too. Not for drama, but for growth. For hope that government could still spark something honest. And just like that, a confrontation became a cornerstone. Not just of Crockett's rise, but of a shift in how America views courage. Her story became one of standing tall. Of speaking truth in power's face. And Hunt's story became one of reflection. Of understanding that strength takes many forms. Together, their exchange became something rare in Washington, real. And in that reality, a new respect was born, stronger than argument. Stronger than rank. Stronger than ego. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a debate, she redefined the battlefield.